Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about the fractures or fracture thing in Halo Infinite. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it yet, but fractures or fracture, the kind of non-canon season things they're going to be doing in Infinite, because MCC recently has kind of changed my opinion on these fractures, and the more that I've sat there and thought about them, I actually think that they're going to be one of the game's best features. And as well, I think they're going to alleviate one of the big concerns I had about the game being live service. So it's going to be fun to talk about. But before we do so, there's one thing that we've got to talk about, right? Just real quick. The emo hair's gone. Not forever. It's not gone forever, but I just felt like a change. I've had the emo hair for a little while now, so I felt like going back short for a little bit, but don't you worry, the emo hair is going to be back. So, on to the topic of today's video, the fractures or fracture armor. I still don't really know how you meant to pronounce it. Why do I suddenly think they're one of the game's best features? Well, if you saw the other day, I released a video covering the lore behind all of MCC's new armors coming in Season 8, and those armors were basically giving us a taste of what is possible with fractures in Halo Infinite, and honestly, it has me so excited. So let me just briefly explain what fractures are if you can't remember or you don't know. Basically, in Halo Infinite, they're going to have seasons, and part of these seasons, there are going to be events that are going to give armor that I think are called fractures armor. Basically, it's to denote armor that is non-canon, which allows them to be a little crazier with the designs of them. So when they first announced the fractures, at first I didn't really know what they meant by them, but then when I figured out what they meant, I wasn't the biggest fan of non-canon armors. Non-canon stuff in general, I've never really been a fan of, as a lore fan at least. I like everything to be kind of contained within the main universe, and because I feel like when something's non-canon, it's kind of a waste of potential, especially if it's really cool. And I feel like I don't get as invested in it when it's not canon, because, I mean, it's not part of the main universe, right? So, like, why would I care? Like, I care about the Halo universe, not these random other universes. But then MCC released a Fractures-esque armor, and we got our first taste of the kind of lore that could come with them, and with the potential of fractures, and suddenly the whole thing just clicked for me. And not only did it click, but all of a sudden I was like, hang on, this might actually fix one of the biggest worries I have about Infinite being live service. So with live service games, right, what happens is, because they rely on microtransactions, normally cosmetic microtransactions, to kind of keep the boat afloat, what they have to do is constantly kind of outdo themselves with the microtransactions they release, and when those micros are cosmetic, that means basically constantly releasing cosmetics that kind of outdo each other. So the game starts off like typically quite meek and timid, but then over the lifespan of the game, the cosmetics like get a bit crazier and a bit crazier and a bit crazier every time, to the point where the game just completely loses its identity. So let's look, for example, at Modern Warfare, because this is a game that I think really suffered from this. Modern Warfare, when it launched in 2019, was a really gritty, like, really well-designed modern military shooter. But then, as the live service part of it went on, they started adding weird and crazy skins, and at the end of it, Modern Warfare turned from a gritty shooter into some weird, air quotes, modern shooter that had people running around shooting, like, neon laser tracer guns in weird ghillie suits with anime catgirl helmets, and bloody Jigsaw was in there as well. It completely lost its identity, and when you've got a game with an art style and aesthetic that looks as good and that is as, like, heralded by the fans as Halo Infinite's, it would really suck to see that happen to Infinite. It'd really suck if 343 finally nailed the Halo aesthetic as well as they have done in Halo Infinite, and make a Halo game that looks this good, only for its style to be kind of eroded over time by people running around with, like, unicorn, vibrant, galaxy animated weed skins or whatever. I feel like that would just do it such a disservice. So, you're probably wondering, okay, how do the fractures fix that, right? Sounds kind of crazy. Well, I think that honestly, if the fractures are approached in a similar way to how they were approached in MCC for Season 8, where it's not just like a piece of armor, they actually kind of design like a mini universe around it, they give it like setting, they give it backstory, they give it lore, they give it a reason to exist in its technically non-canon universe, I think they can really circumvent the need to just fall back on the typical, like I said, like vibrant colours, weed skins with laser guns and everything. They don't have to fall back on that when they've got all these like little pocket universes they can create, that they can create like very strange and still kind of out there like bits of lore, they're still able to satisfy that need for skins to constantly be like one-upping themselves with how crazy they look, but it can be done, I think, in a more tasteful way. And I think the ability to kind of veer off into non-canon and like alternate universe stuff to act as like the foundations for new armor stops the designers from being almost backed into the corner where it's like, oh, well, I guess the craziest thing we can make now is make everything really vibrant and animated, right? Like, you get that in a lot of games. Fortnite has a lot of that, where skins are like really vibrant now and they're like animated and stuff. And I feel like having all these little pocket universes they can make with the lore to act as the foundation for these armors should allow them to kind of circumvent that. And I think MCC's Fractures-esque armors are a real taste of this. They're crazier armors, but done right. Don't get me wrong, they're still quite out there, right? But I think for the most part, they really don't violate the Halo aesthetic, at least in my opinion, and they don't just resort to being like super vibrant and colourful and hyper-saturated and gimmicky to stand out. Instead, what they do is they take the established Halo Mjolnir aesthetic and put a very unique, albeit kind of weird spin on it that's only enhanced by the backstory they give the armor that helps give it context and a reason to exist in its own kind of pocket universe. And if you ask me, this is crazier and wackier cosmetics done right, and given that it's the approach they've taken with MCC, of which 343 seem to like to use as almost a testbed for infinite features, I really hope that it's the approach that Infinite's going to be taking with its Fractures over resorting to the gimmicky and silly approach that most other modern live service games take with their microtransaction cosmetics. If that's the case, then I am so excited to see what they come up with. But then I've got to say, I think one of my favourite aspects of the Fractures is just the insanely cool narrative elements that can come from the Fractures that aren't really possible from the main canon, where everything has to be quite serious and has to have like a very solid reason to exist in 500 years in the future, right? I mean, for example, there's so many things they could do. They could have armor that was built in a setting where there was like a, I don't know, a traditional zombie outbreak in 2525, and the UEG and ONI and the UNSC created the Spartans to counter that like traditional zombie outbreak, and thus the Mjolnir they wear is very much designed around that. Or they can do stuff like the new MCC armors, like, I don't know, for example, what if ancient Egypt had its own Spartan program and designed its own Mjolnir and they ran into the Covenant? What would that armor look like? What if feudal Japan had a Spartan program and they encountered a floodbreak? Very Kingdom-like, if anybody watches that show. Fantastic show, by the way. Watch it if you haven't on Netflix. But what kinds of Mjolnir would they make? Like feudal Japan, like anti-biohazard Mjolnir. What would the Mjolnir have looked like if the humans were allowed into the Covenant and could have used Covenant tech as the basis of Mjolnir? What if the Brutes made their own very brutish Spartan program to force captured humans to fight for them? What if Oni made a portal into Hell and used the materials they mined there to create the Mjolnir to fight the Covenant? I mean, there's so many crazy ideas. I could literally go on forever. I'm sure you guys are going to be putting some really cool ideas in the comments as well. There are so many ideas of what they could do with the Fractures that are just not possible with the main canon. I mean, like, you think about all those videos that me and Raeinok have made together, those versus videos, like Flood versus T-Virus, Flood versus Necromorphs, etc. Theoretically, right, all those, like, kind of universe combinations are kind of possible with Fractures. And as well, of course, Fractures, non-canon events, non-canon armors are perfect for, like, brand collaborations as well. Like, I mean, there's some dream ones. I've mentioned a billion times already. I'd love to see Grey Fox Mjolnir, and some of you guys have actually done some fantastic concept art of that I loved. Also, like, what if, for example, Stars from Resident Evil Special Tactics and Rescue Service had their own Mjolnir? What would that look like? What would Praetor suit Mjolnir from Doom look like? Like, there's so many things that Fractures allows 343 to do, both narratively and design-wise, I think, that, like I said, it's not possible with the regular canon, and that also should allow them to, at least for the most part, circumvent the need to make all the skins look really crazy and gimmicky and wacky just to appeal to the crowds that want to buy microtransactions and to constantly outdo themselves, so every new skin that they release gives someone an incentive to buy it. I think this is a much more kind of mature way of doing that. It's a much more tasteful way of doing that. And yeah, that's all I really want to say, to be honest. This isn't a long video. I just had this idea in my head when I was writing that lore video for the armors in MCC, and I thought, you know what? I want to talk about this in a video because the Fractures, after MCC Season 8's flight, have got me really, really excited, and I cannot wait to see what 343 do with it. Like, I'm really hoping that they do push the boat out with it in Infinite quite a lot and do some kind of crazy looking armors. I'm talking crazy in a this kind of way, or crazy in a this kind of way, right? There's so many things they can do, and I'm really excited to see the potential of it. Hopefully, we get armors that look as good as some of the new MCC ones. I know some people aren't a fan. Personally, I love them, but I'm hoping, dude. But yeah, I'm going to round the video out here because I don't really have much to say today. I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys about something I'm excited for, because these are the best kind of videos to make, right? I love making these kind of videos. So yeah, let's round the video out here. So I want to give a massive thank you to Ricardus Dive and Brandon Mihelic for becoming new Primordials over on Patreon, and to OHGODITSZEALOT for becoming a new iconic one over on Patreon. Thank you very much, friendos. And of course, to everyone else who continues to support me over there, thank you very much. And thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Leave your ideas for cool Fractures armor kind of collaborations or ideas that you'd like to see down below in the comments. And I'll catch you all in the next one.